Today's lecture is entitled The Absolute Truth and Hegel, an Introduction, or What Zizek and most Hegelians do not know about Hegel. This talk is based on my books, The Jedi Handbook of Global Education and Hegel and the Solution to Our Postmodern World Crisis. First, a brief word to the Jedi churches of the world. As you know, our task today is to heal our planet. What I am doing in the Jedi Handbook is providing a scientific justification for the reality of the Force, the Jedi Order, and the balance of the Force. So I am totally with you and not against you. Let's work together to realize the Jedi Order on Earth in our own lifetime. Now, my talk is also inspired by two of Hegel's quotes, which puts all of Hegel's writings in their true context. Quote, "Strive towards the sun, my friends, that the salvation of the human race, the Jedi Order, may soon come to fruition." And in Hegel's 1795 letter to Schelling, quote, "May Reich Gottes, the kingdom of God, come, and our hands not be idle in our laps." Accordingly, I will be using a Star Wars format that Hegel's ideas may reach a wider audience. Thus, I use the Force for Hegel's absolute idea, as well as for religion's God and empirical science's universe, the totality of all that is. I use a Jedi, your true immortal self, for Hegel's spirit or Geist. In other systems, a bodhisattva, awakened one, a self-actualized, self-realized, God-realized individual. I use the balance, as in the balance of the Force, and polarity for Hegel's unity of opposites or identity in difference principle, aka dialectic or absolute negativity, negation of negation. I use the knowledge of the Force and Jedi science for Hegel's philosophical science. That is, absolute presuppositionalist science in distinction from empirical, relative, or positive science. Finally, I use the Jedi Order for Hegel, Schelling, and Hölderlin's Reich Gottes, Kingdom of God, a fully healed, functioning world in which the freedom and equality of all spirits reigns and all powers of all peoples of the earth are actualized. Okay, what is the absolute truth according to Hegel? Simply put, as Hegel states at Encyclopedia 236, quote, "The idea or the Force as the unity of opposites, concept and reality, is the absolute truth and all truth." Indeed, for Hegel, quote, "Science, Wissenschaft, is nothing but the truth aware of itself." The Jedi Handbook clarifies this as follows on page 9 FF. And now, speaking as an enlightened Jedi, as Obi-Wan Kenobi, I continue. There is only one reality, the idea, which we call the Force, which of necessity transforms itself immediately or timelessly into the Jedi Order. The one reality, or the Force, has two polar opposite sides. We call them the light side, plus, and the dark side minus. That is, in the language of your philosopher-scientists, thought and the senses, the invisible and the visible, consciousness and matter, the inner and the outer, self and other, subjectivity and objectivity. The secret and truth is that these two sides, represented by your Jedi Plato's divided line, are in eternal unity or balance. Unity of plus and minus. This is due to the important principle of polarity, or the unity of opposites. You can't have one without the other. Up without down. Inner without outer. And North Pole, South Pole, female, male, freedom, necessity, etc. The further truth or secret, known only to Jedi and to some of your quantum physicists, is that within the force's unity or balance, it is the light side that trumps or predominates over the dark side. For example, consciousness over matter, the inner over the outer, subjectivity over objectivity. This is because, for example, consciousness knows that it exists, is self-aware, whereas matter does not and is not. The important result is that consciousness, the inner subjectivity, is all reality, while matter, unconsciousness, is nothing. As some of your own scientists have discovered, for example, Sir Arthur Eddington, who states that, quote, "The world we see and experience in everyday life is simply a convenient mirage, attuned to our very limited senses. It's an illusion conjured by our perceptions and our mind. So-called matter is mostly emptiness. Indeed, the stuff of the world is mind stuff." Moreover, and most significantly, consciousness is one and indivisible. This is because consciousness is the polar opposite of matter or body, which is many and divisible. And note especially that the trumping of the object by the subject does not mean that the object, the world, is totally done away with, but rather that the object has become utterly subjectivized or saturated with the subject, consciousness or the concept. Hence, in relating to the world, you are equally relating to yourself. This unity of opposites, the balance, is the truth. It is the living core of the knowledge of the force. It is the absolute proof and certainty that the Jedi Order exists and exists now, since subject and objective world are inseparable and in eternal unity. Your people merely need to become aware of this fact through true Jedi education, which again is essentially a movement from the outer to the inner, and then back again to the outer, and to the permanent unity of inner and outer, subject and world. As your Jedi Hegel says at Encyclopedia 424, quote, "Freedom and reason consist in this, that I have in one and the same consciousness I and the world, that in the world I find myself again, And conversely, in my consciousness, I have what is. What has objectivity? Thus, the force is already and eternally balanced. This means that the true meaning of our expression, quote, bringing balance to the force, is that one simply gain an awareness of this present balance. That the force's two sides are in eternal union. It is also well to note, my noble Padawans, that some of your own philosophers, scientists, and religionists have already found the truth, the knowledge of the force, in part, though it is still not yet being taught on your planet. For example, Einstein, Schrodinger, Bohr, Bohm, Wheeler, Laszlo, Bell and Aspect, qua non-locality, F.A. Wolf, Wilbur, Goswami, Heish, McDermott, Altizer, Leahy, Watts, and Grof, qua transpersonal psychology, and so-called NDEs and OBEs. As your Jedi Stan Grof states, quote, "The observations from consciousness research dispel the current myth of materialistic science that consciousness is an epiphenomenon of matter, a product of neurophysiological processes in the brain. They show that consciousness is a primary attribute of existence and that it is capable of many activities that the brain could not possibly perform. According to the new findings, human consciousness is a part of and participates in a larger universal field of cosmic consciousness that permeates all of existence. Our true identity, thus, is the totality of cosmic creation and the creative principle itself, the force." As your own Jedi Erwin Schrodinger, founder of quantum physics, observes, quote, "It is not possible that this unity of knowledge, feeling, and choice, which you call your own, should have sprung into being from nothingness at a given moment not so long ago. Rather, this knowledge, feeling, and choice are essentially eternal and unchangeable, and numerically one in all men. Therefore, you and all other conscious beings are all in all, the whole, das Ganz." Now, many things follow from this. First, the Jedi Order, the unity of all your people on earth, exists now and forever. For you all share the same one indivisible consciousness. This absolutely present, inviolable unity is the solution to all of your world's problems without exception. Therefore, your planet's history is nothing but education. The time it takes for your human race to realize the truth. Second, hence your people are already Jedi, one with the Force and each other, but not aware of this due to miseducation by your planet's institutions and your immersion in the dark side of the Force, separation, and the outer. This teaches the disunity of opposites and the separateness of your people and nations from each other, and that you are just a body ego or a particular individual, PI. This is the root of all fear, hate, greed, sickness, and the true cause of your problems. And third, therefore, as a Jedi, you have a universal self, or you are a universal individual, you-I. And you are immortal, because consciousness is reality and indestructible. I think, therefore I am, Descartes. And your essence, further, is love, which alone exists, due to polarity's eternal unity of self and other. Moreover, as a Jedi, who you really are, your true self, not only do you know the truth, you are the truth. For a Jedi, the truth is simply the unity of the opposites, universal and individual. Put differently, since there is nothing but the Force, your knowledge of the Force is at one and the same time the Force's knowledge of itself. Your scientists are beginning to understand this, and it is the inner teaching of all of your religions, though expressed in coded language, as we'll see. As Hegel says, quote, science, the knowledge of the Force, is alone self-knowing truth and the whole of truth. And further, quote, God is our true and essential self. And Teilhard de Chardin says, quote, we are the universe now thinking about itself. As Albert Einstein said, quote, a human being is a part of the whole, called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings, as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, says Einstein, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this ego prison by widening our circles of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. End quote. And your astrophysicist, Bernard Heisch, insists that, quote, it is not matter that creates an illusion of consciousness, but consciousness that creates an illusion of matter. The physical universe and the beings that inhabit it are the conscious creation of a God, the Force, who is an infinite, timeless consciousness and actualizes his infinite potential through our experience, which is his experience, because ultimately we are him. It follows, says Heisch, that, quote, our lives are the exact opposite of pointless. And of course, if you will, Jedi Master Yoda says, quote, rejoice for those around you who transform into the Force. Now, briefly, although the Jedi Order exists now, and you are immortal, and a Jedi now, you are not experiencing this because of your immersion in the dark side of the Force. You are a victim of the illusion of the self-other separation of yourself as a body ego from everything else. Now, in part 1 of the book, we give an account of how the philosophers-scientists in your history achieved the absolute truth, the knowledge of the Force, and of Jedi absolute science, including a proof of the Force, the idea with the truth. That is, a proof of why the universe, man and God, must exist. And of the key principle of polarity, or the unity of opposites. Now, science is therefore the knowledge of the Force, the truth, and simply studies the Force and its process, which involves three sciences. Logic, the concept of force in itself, potential and unexpressed, and the concept of force for itself, actualized and expressed as Jedi and the Jedi Order. First as nature, object, and second as Jedi, or the Jedi Order.